I'm Cynthia, Myers-Morrison, Vice Chair for Food Addiction Institute, and it's my pleasure today to introduce to you in our webinar Bitten Jonsson. She's an RN, addiction specialist, Addicts Sugar certified, and is a forerunner in this field in Sweden. She's an international lecturer, has been on TV and radio in multiple countries. Bitten trained in the United States and has worked in all addictions, but the last 23 years, she has focused on sugar food addiction using integrated functional medicine, orthomolecular medicine, the American addiction medicine, and traditional medicine in a holistic addiction medicine model. She studied with Terence Gorski, and she is the author of Sugarbomb in 2004, which was revised in 2010 and 2006, will be out in a new edition 2018. Bitten Jonsson has been a member of the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers and NAADAC in the USA for many years, and is now on the board with Food Addiction Institute. She is a delight to hear, and I think you will enjoy her speaking about biochemical repair for food addicts, a tool to restore energy to handle lifestyle changes. So we will hear Bitten Jonsson. Take it away.
Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, I will. Sure. Anything else, Cynthia? Can I? Okay.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, this slide is, if anyone here studied medicine, this is something we learned about the citric acid cycle in the body. And actually, what this picture shows, I'm not going to go into detail, I promise you, because it's very complicated, but what it really shows is that our bodies are not made to handle a lot of carbohydrates. And that's why I wanted to put it in there. And I also think, you know, it's telling me how beautifully complicated it is, but on the other hand, how incredible strong our bodies is, because so many of us has mistreated our bodies and our souls for many, many years. And it still is, you know, running pretty smoothly for us, but we need to do some minor repairs. And this is what I would like to talk about today, you know, how you can do that simple and in a way that it will increase your energy. Because when we come off carbohydrates, sugar and flour and processed junk food, it is not easy to quit that. So I will say that many of us feel low, tired, foggy brain, miserable, depressed maybe. We have a lot of problems when we get off sugar. And here is a way to use some simple tools in order to enhance that process and make it more simple for us to do what is actually a very big lifestyle change. And also in an environment that is many times not very supportive of our changes. So, and if you have questions, I will answer questions later. So please write them down for now, and I'll get back to you. Addiction, and as we talk about sugar, flour, and food addiction today, you know, is a lifelong illness. Once our brains have developed the addiction and those connections are made in the brain, we will have it forever. But we can live symptom-free, we can live a very healthy lifestyle. But I used to joke and say that if you are a Ferrari car, you know, and the only thing you can drive is a tractor, you might crash the car very soon. So to me, the word treatment for addicts is changed to training and education. If we have this illness, we need a lot of knowledge and we need support. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about. And I also say that 10% of the recovery time in the new life is what I think we should use on getting the right food and supplements. because we have been obsessing with food, body, and weight, and we need to stop obsessing. 40% of the time, we need to work very much on our behavior changes, like relapse prevention, thinking, feeling, urges, and actions, what we call the addictive personality, or as I call it, the red dog. The blue dog is our healthy part. This comes from an old Indian story. ANTs, that is automatic negative thoughts, which many times go on repeat. And here's one interesting study that I found, that if we have the wrong fatty acid mixture in our neurons in our brain, we do obsess a lot, because then we have a signal that is like stuck and we can't change focus. So here is one reason really to start adding the good fats and take away the dangerous fats, and I will come to that. 50% of the time in our new recovery road, we need to spend on the community. When everyone that works with addiction will say to you that you can't do this alone. You need support, you need help. And I call it identification. As a sugar and food addict, to me, it was very important to talk to other people that had the same problem, that really understood me, many times without words, and to look at and listen to the people that had gone ahead of me, you know. If you see someone that have what you have, do as they did. Stick to the winners, they said to me in the beginning in the 12 steps. And I found that that is really true. Listen to the ones that are in recovery. They know what to do. So that's, this is sort of a recipe. It's not exactly all this, but this is sort of what I think is important to put time on. The addiction memory circuit, or euphoric recall, as it is said, you know, is the reward system's memory, how we reacted to the drug in the beginning, you know, how we felt comforted, how we felt high, how we felt numb, any kind of feeling that felt good with the drug in the beginning. That kind of memory will be stuck in our brain forever. So as soon as we experience any stressors, or we are tired or feel sick in some way, we are in pain or whatever it is, you know, many times that memory comes back. Why don't you eat? We misinterpret so many signals into eating, food, eating. You know, usually we go for the favorite drug, whatever that was. And we also talk about that this disease is cunning, baffling, powerful, and very patient. So we can be in recovery for many years and something happens and suddenly we have the craving all over again. So that's why we need this toolbox, and we need to expand our toolbox all the time. We need to get more tools, better tools, new tools, and revise our little toolbox. That's what we need to do all the time, is my feeling. The old way of thinking about illness was that it was was a psychosocial approach. Many times when we felt bad, you know, if we had pain in our back, or we had bad stomach or anything, many times it was explained like there was something between our ears. And in a way it is, but it was more thought that pain or trauma in our psyche or mind was expressed as pain in the body. That is what we call the psychosomatic way of thinking of life. And a lot of counselors are still only in that mode, I will say, that they will explain almost anything that happens to us as psychological. But it is extremely important and equally important to understand the somatopsychic way of looking at us. And that means that if our body are biochemically unbalanced, it can be expressed as sadness, aggressiveness, depression. We can get a lot of diagnosis, psychiatric diagnosis, that maybe is only due to the imbalanced body and it's not a diagnosis in itself. And so many of my clients have ended up on that road and got a lot of medications. And of course, that didn't do anything better. Actually, it made everything worse. So we need to understand both these things, the psychosomatic expression and the somatopsychic expression. that is having a holistic view of us and the illness. If we have a long-term bio imbalance, which we of course have when we eat a lot of junk food, we can have a lot of negative irrational thinking, as I said, about the imbalanced fatty acid profile in the brain. We can have a lot of memory problems, foggy brain, no concentration capacity, emotional distress, and stress-related problems, which means that what is normal stressors for somebody that doesn't have our food addiction, and they can handle that very simple on a daily basis. For us, those small problems can be huge, like climbing a mountain, due to the problem that our brain doesn't function as it should, and our body is very depleted of energy. Which areas are affected? Well, handling stress, as I said, what we call postacute withdrawal, which is a term that Gorski made, and he meant that was there was a biochemical imbalance that made everything impossible for us. Anything was like climbing this high mountain, and we didn't have good coping skills or anything in that way. That can lead to personality changes, broken down social structure. Actually, we don't have energy to socialize with people. Difficulty judging the circumstances and things that's happening around us. Our life management breaks down, and we have no coping skills. And this can lead us back to destructive living, to pick up the drug again and live that very destructive life. One thing that I see a lot is people that have gone to therapy for years, and they only picked up 1 or 2 tools, and that have been talking about the problems, but no changes have been made. And if you have a biochemical imbalanced body, you can actually experience false feelings. It's important to know that real feelings is about life. It's about growth, process. It is unavoidable, and they will go away. They will change over time. But false feelings, we can be stuck in them for years, and we go through a lot of therapy and nothing happens. They do not diminish. They make it very difficult to deal with the daily living. And they can also be seen in denial, addictive thinking, and ANTs. Somebody said about the period she was in false feelings after she had done this biochemical repair for about a year, that I always felt like I lived under a black, wet blanket, and today the blanket is gone. And I think that was a very good expression. Post-acute withdrawal is very often mistaken for lack of motivation, for denial and inner resistance in the client. And we say they really don't want to have recovery or go into recovery. I really don't think that is true. I think that most people really want to feel good in all ways. But I think that there are obstacles that we as skilled counselors need to find out and help the client overcome. They could also be mistaken for personality disorder, mental disorder, codependency, and adult child of an alcoholic or other dysfunctional families. So it is very important that if you have a client that you see don't recover or relapse all the time, or if you are a person that relapse a lot and you never really get the recovery going, it's very important that you get to help to look at all the pieces in this illness. It could be some biochemical imbalance that is the piece in the puzzle that stops you from finding the very good recovery. Post-acute withdrawal can last for 6 to 12 months after you quit the drug. It is recurrent, so it can come back when you're very stressed or something happens in your life. it has a low response to psychotherapy, and it worsens from confrontation. So that's important to know. It can also be regenerative, slowly gets better, which is the most common thing. It could be periodic, it comes and goes. It could be stable, it's the same all the time. And that means that we still haven't found that piece in the puzzle that will help the client overcome the obstacle. It could be degenerative, it could be worsening. And all these phases needs to be assessed by somebody that understands the somatopsychic part of the addiction illness. The most common problems that I see on a daily basis when I work with clients is hyperinsulinemia, which means that the client is eating too much carbohydrates, so the body is producing a tremendous amount of insulin, and I will get back to what that causes in the body. And of course, a lot of insulin causes volatile blood sugar, and I will talk a little bit more about that too. And then the dysbiosis, you know, the imbalanced intestinal flora, or as we talk about today, the microbiome, and the connection, the gut-brain connection, which several good books out there and several good talks on YouTube. And I can, if anyone is interested, I could provide you with books and links to where you can listen to things about the gut-brain connection. Another thing in addiction we see is overbreathing. I will also talk a little bit about that. Adrenal fatigue, which is very common, I must say. And of course, low dopamine, since sugar and carbohydrates makes the brain release tremendous amount of dopamine, and the body cannot produce enough dopamine in time to fill that void. A severely unbalanced fatty acid profile, because a lot of junk food is made on processed vegetarian lipids, which is not good for us. And of course, inflammation. Sugar and flour creates inflammation in the body, and a lot of people today talk about that inflammation is the mother of most illnesses. Like they say that diabetes type 2 is an inflammation. Alzheimer's is an inflammation in the brain, and it's also called diabetes type 3 today, which is insulin resistance in those cells in the brain. If we look at hyperinsulinemia, too much insulin will upset salt balance. There is, you know, the old notion that salt is dangerous for us. It is not. I treat people with telling them to add salt, but it should be the right kind, not the processed white salt that you find in the grocery store. And I get back to that. It should be sea salt. But a lot of people don't salt their food enough, don't get enough salt, and that will lead to adrenal fatigue. The adrenals need a lot of salt in order to function, but you can't combine sugar and salt. So the problem is sugar, it is not salt. Too much insulin leads to a thickening and contraction of artery walls, which of course will lead to high blood pressure. And it will also lead to a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and a high cholesterol. It's sugar leading to that, and not fat, as they had told us before. It prevents the cells from releasing fat for fuel, and it also increases risk for pro-insulin leak. And that is very interesting, because if you pressure your pancreas to produce a lot of insulin, i.e. you eat a lot of carbs, 90% of all the insulin produced in the body is due to the amount of carb that you put in. 10% is due to protein, and 0 is due to fat. But if we pressure pancreas to produce a lot of insulin, it could at some time release immatured insulin, which is called pro-insulin. Pro means before. And what happens then, what they have seen in studies is that when the pancreas releases pro-insulin, it also leaks clotting factors that will lead to a high risk for stroke, both in the heart and in the brain. And it also will release some growth hormone that will increase the risk for cancer. So to have a very high insulin production and run into maybe have a problem with proinsulin is very dangerous. And of course, eating a lot of sugar and carbs and having a high insulin level will lead to volatile blood sugar. And as you see, I'm not going to go through all of these symptoms, but I can say that mood swings is one of the biggest problem with this, you know, energy swings and mood swings. You have times during the day where you feel really great and then you can dip. And I'm thinking about a lot of teenagers that I see, you know, they drink those Red Bulls and eat sweets and candy. And a lot of times we talk about that young people today are depressed or lazy. They don't want to go out and move. And I say it's because they don't have any energy in their brain, of course, due to that eating, and also panic anxiety. And of course, if you expose your brain to that kind of eating, you will get panic in your brain because your brain is saying, we're going to die if you keep this stuff up. So, you know, it's a lot of problems that come with a volatile blood sugar. Rage is another one, outbursts, migraine. As you can see, there is a lot of things that a lot of symptoms that could be due to volatile blood sugar. The brain is very sensitive to that. And I think here is a misunderstanding too, that a lot of people say that, well, the brain cannot be without sugar. No, it can't, because that's the fuel for the brain. But first of all, you know, there were no sodas or cakes or stuff, you know, in the old days, and we survived then too. The thing is that the body can make sugar from fat and protein. We don't need to add even the least sugar. We don't need any sugar added at all. So that is very important to remember. When it comes to dysbiosis, so we see that you know, today there's been a lot of use of antibiotics too, and the processed food we eat is really creating a lot of problem. And we know more today about, you know, the emotional problems coming from dysbiosis, an imbalance in your intestinal flora. And there's a lot of things that can lead to that. But what it can cause is all these things like inflammation, fatigue, burnout, immunity system deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies. Because these imbalanced germs, they take a lot of nutrition. They also ruin the villi, which I will come to in the next slide. Toxins in the blood, they can lead to dysbiosis can lead to a huge problem that is called leaking gut syndrome, and that has been seen to be behind a lot of the autoimmune illnesses we see today. A lot of researchers say that multiple sclerosis could be due to leaking gut syndrome, psoriasis could be due to leaking gut, fibromyalgia is seen as an autoimmune illness today. So there's a lot of illnesses you can get if you go with dysbiosis for many years, and that in turn leads to the leaking gut syndrome. So you could do a lecture in several hours about dysbiosis actually, and it's extremely interesting to learn more about allergies, mental problems, and so forth. In our intestines, we have like fuzz that's called villi. And you see the villi there as little fingers sticking up. And villi, the quality of your villi is extremely important for the nutrient uptake. And one of the things that leads to a ruined villi is gluten in wheat, in flour, because it acts as an abrasive. And I'm not talking about, you know, gluten allergy. I'm talking about gluten intolerance. And here in Sweden anyway, any client that I work with, I always say, take away any flour of any kind. And wheat is the biggest drama. And if you haven't read Dr. Perlmutter's Grain Brain, I recommend you to read that one. And most people get so much healthier when they take away gluten. And this is not only for sugar and food addicts. This is for people with a lot of other problems too, actually. But if you have a reduced villi, if you look at this picture and you think that you scrape away the upper layer, it's going to be a slippery slope. And the villi is going to take the nutrients from the food and put it down into the blood vessels so that it can go out in your body. But if this is a plain surface, you know, the nutrients will go straight through you. So that is a big problem. And also, of course, wheat is sugar because it's a starch. So it is as potent as sugar when it comes to addiction. The next thing that we have a problem with is overbreathing. I used to joke and say, you know, addicts, they overdo everything. They overeat, they overshop, they overwork, they overtrain, they over. We are all or nothing people, and so many of us overbreathe. If you really check your own breathing, you can see that usually we have many more breaths a minute than we should have. So when you overbreathe, the body becomes very acidic. And of course, that leads to craving because the brain thinks that you are in an emergency. So, you know, you want sugar. So to do breathing training is extremely important. That's one of my favorite tools to really start working on your breathing and to breathe through your nose and not through your mouth. And as you see, we have a sleep tape there. So only when I'm coughing, if I had a cold, you know, I'm not using my sleep tape, but I use sleep tape every night otherwise. And that has improved my sleeping tremendously because that forces me to sleep, to breathe with my nose. I also use the relaxator, that little green button, as you see in the middle there, because it promotes abdominal breathing, and because mouth breathing causes oxygen depletion, apnea, and stress. So you have a page where you can go into there, theconsciousbreathing.com, and the book is excellent. I've read a lot about breathing training through the years, but this book is very scientific and explains so much behind the breathing, and it also helps you to assess your own breathing to see how bad it is or how good it is and what you need to do. And it also comes with a 28-day training program that is very simple to do. But a lot of people think that going to the bathroom, you know, to have a stool movement, that is the best thing to detox your body. And I'm telling you, it's not. The correct breathing is 60% of all the detox to get rid of what the body needs to get rid of on a daily basis. Sweating, you know, go to the sauna is only 30%, and stool movement is only 10%. So instead of worrying too much about going to the bathroom, you know, you can do breathing exercise all day long. So that is very important. And then we have the burnout or adrenal fatigue. I see that as very common today, actually. And I don't think that is so strange when we think about that. The adrenals are the first line of defense in everything, you know, whether you are dealing with small stress things during the day or big emergencies, or you work too much, or you eat wrong, or whatever we do. Our adrenals are there to be our bodyguards, you know. They are the fire department, the police department, you know. They are anything that is out there, first line of defense. So if we don't have a balanced lifestyle, you know, they will be very tired. But it's not like what a lot of people think, that they stop producing cortisol, because they don't. But you know, if you pressure them too much, it will be like with diabetes type 2, which is an insulin resistance. You know, there is insulin, but the cell is not answering the insulin signal. And here is the same with the cortisol. They are still producing cortisol, but the cell is not answering the signal because you had rung the bell too many times. So it's saying, well, I'm not going to listen to that ringing anymore. And then you will get a lot of these problems that I describe here, like endurance problems, extreme fatigue, sleep disturbances, lack of energy, no mental horsepower, as we say, concentration disorder, anxiety attacks, restlessness and impulsive, hasty decisions, difficulty organizing, keeping structure, and often a feeling of chaos when things are slightly disorganized, coordination problems, severe mood swings, and problems communicating. And of course, this makes it very difficult to start any new lifestyle changes, you know. Thinking about, you know, a lot of young women I had that have small children, they are working, and then, you know, as a counselor, we ask them to go to several meetings a week, to read literature, to talk to people in the recovery program, to exercise, to eat different. That is not easy. So we have to be very kind to people in the beginning, you know, and help them to really take only baby steps. Many times, you know, I see them, they go to counselors and ask for help, and they get overwhelming programs, overwhelming. You know, there's no way they can do all that. So they just quit and go back to the destructive living. So if we keep these things, you know, how the body is so out of balance in mind, and help them see that it is okay to be very tired. It is okay to take small baby steps. It is okay to do small things in the beginning, to slowly gain energy before you do any major changes in your life. I think that's very important. And also, there's a lot of good supplements out there today, which we can help people to restore the sensitivity to cortisol. Here's a picture. Oh, time is running. I see that. Oh my goodness. David, you tell me to stop if I need to. The thing is, anyway, that we can end up with leptin resistance, insulin resistance, leptin resistance, adrenal resistance, and burnout. And that leads to biochemical collapse. And also, a lot of us have been scared about high cholesterol. There is no studies showing really that a higher cholesterol than the normal values is dangerous for us, but that's a whole lecture in itself. So I jump that for now and keep going. The low dopamine, as you see here, leads to fuzzy, muddled thinking. We feel depressed and low, apathetic, you know, nothing is fun to do. Reduced libido and unable to get things done. That is basically the thing with this, that we tell people, do this, do that, and so forth. And they said, they come back to us and say, nothing gets done. I can't get things done. And that is due to a low dopamine level. So we need to help them restore dopamine before we have them exercise or do things that they need to do. I used to say like this, if the car is broken down, we need to do a fuel mix change before we can start running the car again. And then we can do things. Fat is very important. We have been so fat scared, salt and fat scared. What we know today is that the sheath, the myelin sheath along the axon, if that destroys, one of the illnesses you can get is multiple sclerosis. But our brain contains animal fat, and too much vegetarian omega-6 raises inflammation in the brain. And the ideal balance is 2/3 of animal fat, like fish oil, and 1/3 of vegetarian oils. And we should never ever put any kind of processed vegetarian oils in our mouth. They are very dangerous. Inflammatory enhancers versus inflammatory decreasers. And you can see that sugar, grain, flour, processed vegetarian oils, meat of poor quality, meat where the animals are fed, grains, is not good. Cows are grass eaters. If they eat grass, it's okay for us to eat their meat. Many milk products, the same there. The milk is very processed. Ghee is okay. Additives like coloring and any other additives, high fructose corn syrup, well, any processed food. Some of the things that we need to increase in our food plan is garlic, ginger, turmeric, green leaves and avocado, fish oil, cayenne pepper, chili, and what I call biologically appropriate food. And that's something I learned actually from looking at dog food. You know, a horse should not eat meat. Anyone understands that. So we need to eat according to our biology, and we are omnivores, which means well, we can eat anything, but not processed food, of course. Oxytocin is extremely important, and you can see low levels of oxytocin. It gives a lot of problems like irritated, stressed, tensed, scattered mind, sleep disturbances, cravings. Usually we don't want what we want, you know. I'm just unsatisfied. I want something, but I don't really know what I want. That type of craving is very classic with low oxytocin. Easily bored, feeling lonely even with others, no ability to bond, feeling uneasy. Volume eating, competes, achieve. Volume eating on my clients that really have a big volume eating, I can see that oxytocin levels is very, very low. So one thing is to work on increasing oxytocin, and there is no supplement we can take for doing that. But actually, there are other supplements, other amino acids we can take to raise other neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, GABA, also, and so forth. There are, and research with oxytocin shows that if we have good levels of the others neurotransmitters, oxytocin will actually go along and race with it. And here are some tips on things you can do to increase oxytocin. Of course, optimal nutrition. Research shows that protein and fat is necessary to build extra oxytocin. And here we talk about slow physical activity, nature walks, yoga, meditation, crafting, garden work, tactile massage, pedicure, hugs, any massage, hairdresser, deep breathing exercise, serenity, rest, prayer, spirituality, and pets, and especially dogs. Of course, I say that because I'm a dog lover, but cats work too. So those are some of the things they have found in research. If we summarize the tools, I would say food, water, sea salt, start with that, you know, no recovery work. Or I should put it this way, of course, recovery work can be done, but if you have the foundation, it's the best thing is to make the foundation first before you build the other part of the house. And food, water, and sea salt are a foundation. And then breathing, sleeping, physical activity, and then supplements. Here are some of the simple basic tools you can start with when you cut sugar. And I always go cold turkey with my clients. You know, I cut sugar and flour, processed food from 1 second to another, and put them on, you know, a clean meat, clean food plan. But what we don't know in the beginning when we work with someone is, I used to say that we should all have fuel, but the fuel mix could be different for different people. So some people need, less carbs, more fat and protein, and others, more carbs, less fat and protein. So that we don't know in the beginning. And I think that is important to help the client to find out by trying, what is the best fuel mix for this person. And that can also change. Like one thing I see is the women that go into menopause. Many times we have to readjust the fuel mix when they go into menopause. So there are some things to know about that and work with. But we don't have time to talk about that right now. Here's just a recipe on good waters, because we recommend that you drink water and no other drinks. And here are some ways to spice up your water. These are not smoothies. I'm not a friend of powders and smoothies. Others might like that, but that's not my cup of tea. But here are just ways to flavor your water. And ginger is very good because that increases insulin sensitivity. Parsley is very good in helping your kidneys to clean out stuff that they need to clean out. And cucumbers is very basic, so that is very good to clean your body from acidity. And usually I switch between the ginger, the parsley, and the cucumber drinks, So you can hopefully go back and read those simple recipes, how you do this flavoring of the water, which are also healthy stuff. Here are some supplements that I like to use. The glutamine powder is really good to heal your intestine. If you have been eating a lot of gluten, for instance, and you might have very, very little villi. So glutamine will actually heal those little holes that you have from a lack of villi. So I usually put my clients in the very beginning when they detox on glutamine powder, half a teaspoon, 2 to 3 times a day. Coconut oil is beautiful. It is anti-virus, antibacteria. So it's, and it also is one of the fats that the body has the easiest way to transform into sugar in the beginning when our body is used to use carbs for fuel. So organic coconut oil, and you can also take a teaspoon to a tablespoon in your coffee or tea between meals. That's a very good craving, anti-craving tool. I use fish oil, good fish oil. I use B vitamins, C vitamins, D vitamin with K2, which is very good for your brain. And I also use magnesium and other minerals. And then if I work with a client and I do a full assessment, I work with amino acids and some other special supplements that enhance methylation, which is the body's ability to convert what you eat into fuel for the brain. But that is could be tricky to do on your own, to work with that, because I like to have a trained professional do the assessment first to see what the body lacks.
Bitten, I'm enchanted, but we do need to have a little bit of time for question and answer.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So do you, the way that we can question and answer, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, we may have to have you come back and continue. The way that we question and answer is on screen, there's the chat, so you may pose your questions. And I'll start with a question while other people write in their Q&A or chat, either one. One is with regard to fruit and soy. How would you address those two?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, fruit today is, for me, candy. That it's a lot of sugar. I prefer berries. Some of my clients can have very little fruit very, very seldom. Because, as I told you, the fuel mix is different. But if you have dysbiosis, I would recommend that you really take away all the fruits, because fruit, the sugar in fruit will feed the candida. So until you are healed in that, you know, I would say no fruit. And I would never ever recommend fruit, even for the ones that can handle fruit. I will never recommend it as a snack. Actually, I don't like snacks at all, because I think it stresses our body to eat between meals. Except for the glutamine coconut. And what was the other question?
About soy.
Soy, yeah, no. I'm a big no sayer to soy in any way, shape, or form.
And dairy.
Well, most of my clients cannot handle milk, cream, you know, that type of things, yogurt and that. But a lot of them can tolerate butter. And I think organic butter is really good for the body and the brain.
Thank you.
And the ones that are very sensitive to casein, I would say to use ghee, you know.
Okay. And I'm not seeing any questions yet in chat or Q&A. The processed vegetable oils you mentioned, what are they?
Well,
That's
they
the avoid.
are like, what do you call it now? Canola oil. It's very high in omega-6. A lot of the vegetable oils that are in processed foods are actually very harmful to us, because they increase inflammation. So I can turn it around by saying there are 3 added fats that I like or recommend, and one is butter, the real butter, and the other one is coconut oil. Well, actually it's 4. So butter, coconut oil, MCT oil, which comes from coconut, you know, and olive oil. Those are the organic olive oil, of course. And of course, you know, we don't recommend people to eat anything that has a label on it or bought in the store. So therefore, you know, you don't have to get those in you. The worst kinds are all those substitute butters, you know, they are horrible, like the margarine or whatever. I don't know what you call them in different countries, but they are horrible.
Thank you, Bitten. Now there are some questions. Can you see the Q&A questions?
Yeah, I'm going to click on that.
Yes, people have caught up.
Yeah, let's see here.
Go ahead.
Rosa, resources to find counselors who are educated. Oh, one, where do you go? Wait a minute. Rose,
It's resources to find counselors who are educated.
Okay, they popped in a new one. Resources to find counselors who are educated about sugar addiction and recovery near where we live. Okay. I am working on putting a list together, and if you want to work with somebody that know about sugar addiction recovery, Food Addiction Institute is an excellent way to start looking at that. And I know that Esther Helga is also working on putting together a list of people that are trained. And also I will put it, I'm working on putting one on my website now, which is still in Swedish, but hopefully soon in English. And there we are working on going out to everyone around the world that we know that work with this, and have asked them, would you like to be on the list, please? So it will be coming lists. Can we eat cocoa powder? Well, I wouldn't. I know that I did in the beginning, you know, added pure cocoa powder to all kinds of things. Soya milk, for instance, I should be very healthy and do that. That lead me to relapse. And as far as I know, there is something in cocoa that's called amandamide that can act as a drug on our brain. So I would say no to that. Maybe someone can, I can't. Can you say more about soy and why you don't recommend it? Well, the reason I don't like soy is because it really dampens our thyroid. It has, it's also one of the foods that are very processed, very, what you call it? There can be a lot of soy out there with a lot of pesticides in it. I've read pretty much about it, so I see that the people that have used it, they don't feel well, and they feel much better when I take it away. And I think it has, I think it dampens the thyroid. I think that's my main issue with soy. So what we do with vegetarians, okay, then I have to ask, vegetarians or vegans? Vegetarians usually eat milk products, and they could eat butter then, or they also eat fish and eggs, as far as I'm concerned. Vegans don't. And I used to say, I don't work with vegans because I have no idea what to recommend them to eat, since I don't, I'm not a vegan whatsoever. I eat meat, I eat fish, I eat chicken, I eat eggs, and I eat butter. So I'm not sure what to do, but I think there are pages out there where you can look for what vegans should eat. I'm not good at that. Sandy asks, are all milk products not good for me? Well, if you could find unprocessed milk, you could try that. And it's also very difficult to answer, you know, because my experience with the clients that I've worked with is that about 70% of my food addicts will not be able to be drug-free if they have milk products in their meal plan. And usually most of them like to binge on cream and berries. That's actually what they do. So when we take that away, they can tolerate like butter and some yogurt. So you have to try for yourself to see what can be good for you and what cannot. Judith asked again, why soy? I have talked about that one. What sort of fish oil is good fish oil? Well, here in Sweden, there are two companies that I work with that have, you know, the doing the good fishing. You know, they don't exploit the fish. The process to make the fish oil is very good. And of course, if you can get good quality fish, sardines is okay. You know, if you can eat that a lot, you might not need to add a supplement fish oil. But if you are not capable of doing that, you know, look around and check the label and see how the producer is. Where do they get the fish oil from? And is it really good products? You need to shop around and really ask good questions about that. Vera, how do you deal with the people who are vegan and vegetarians? Political, but can it be nutritional? Oh, Vera, that is one of the worst questions I have. Vegetarians, I really don't have any problems with, because as I said, they can eat some fish, they eat ghee, many of them, they eat egg. So that usually is sufficient to get the right fatty lipid acid in the brain. But vegans is really difficult for me, because I really don't know what to tell them. And actually, the few vegans that have come to me, if they want to stay vegan, I have not had very good results with treating them. So I don't know what to do about that. And many vegans I have had, I would say too, have started to eat fish and butter and eggs, and they get much more energy. No, I'm not calling berries fruit. The berries that I prefer is raspberry, very low in carb, only 4 grams carb per 100. Blueberries, cloudberries, and raspberries. And of course, again, you know, for some people that could be too much, and for some not. Some people trigger on eating starchy vegetables, and some don't. So, you know, by time they know. Esther asked about apple cider. I wouldn't drink it. Too much sugar for me. Okay, Brenda asks, this is some great information. Any thoughts for tools in long-term recovery who may be struggling with foggy brain and adrenal fatigue? Yeah, Brenda, I see a lot of that too. And, of course, I can't just, say, well, it's because of this and that. But I can say this. I have had clients coming to me that have tried to stay abstinent for a long time, but they still struggle with this because they are lacking nutrients, certain nutrients that can be very helpful for them to overcome it. Many of them have a long-term dysbiosis. So, once we start working with the microbiome and the intestinal flora, many of them feel so much better. And also, of course, checking through their food plan to see, could there be any food intolerance? Is something they eat they don't think about that could be bad for them. So there is a lot of adjustment that could be done, absolutely. Denise asks, what tool do I use for assessment? Well, I have 9 different tools that I use, and I do screening for, dysbiosis, thyroid fatigue, adrenal fatigue, breathing. There is a lot of things we check: neurotransmitter deficiencies. So overall health, biomarkers, brain biomarkers, one of the tests we do. So when I do a full one, I use 9 different tests. And also, I sometimes ask the client to go have some blood tests drawn. So it depends on, but basically the first big 9 questionnaires that I use will give me a pretty good picture of where to look further into certain problems. And of course, if there is a problem that is not within my skills or what I can deal with, I refer them to a specialist to see if there could be something that needs to be further assessed or checked out. Okay, so that was the same. Foggy brain and adrenal fatigue, yeah, and tools. Let me see, do dairy products from grass-fed animals have the same benefits as the meat from those animals? I would say yes to that question, absolutely. And then that the dairy products are not homogenized or processed in any way, shape, or form. It seems that many people can use that. I also like to say that eating a lot of carbs and leading a stressful life will lead to a lack of hydrochloric acid in your stomach and also enzymes. When people come and they quit the carbs, many times we see that they have a lot of enzymes that can break down carbohydrates, but they lack enzymes that break down protein and fatty acids. And they don't have enough. Many people have eaten protein pump inhibitors, which have a lot of side effects. So they don't really break down protein. And if you don't break down protein, you will not get enough amino acids. And if you don't have enough amino acids, you will not have enough fuel to build neurotransmitters. That's the way the body works. So sometimes it's as simple as putting people on the supplement hydrochloric acid before meals, or liposome, which is a fatty acid enzyme, or protasome, which breaks down protein. And that can be enough for many people to restore a lot of energy and health.
Let me ask a question of David here. Can we extend past the 1 hour, which is in just a moment? David, can you unmute or anything?
Yes.
Okay, then go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Apple cider vinegar. Well, I mean, that is not something you use a lot. When I do dressings or something with olive oil or so, I always use lemon. I squeeze lemon. So I assume that you are asking it like that. But small amounts, if you don't have a lot of dysbiosis, I would say would be okay.
She's likely referencing the waters you mentioned.
Pardon me?
She's likely referencing the waters that you mentioned with the ginger and the parsley.
But there is no apple cider vinegar in that.
No, I know. There are many that add it to water.
Apple cider vinegar. Okay.
Right.
Well, no, I've never done it. So, but I know, in the old days they said that would curb your appetite. If that's why you're using it, take it away and eat the right food instead, I would say. Okay. Wait a minute. Let me see. The questions are popping in so fast. I must look where I was. Which YouTube videos you can watch about gut-brain connections? Well, I have a lot of. I have some. Let me see where I put that. Is there somewhere I could put this out, David? Some links to that?
We could put it on the Food Addiction Institute site.
Yeah. Why don't I write a little paper to you with some links where you can go and read further about the gut-brain connection.
Okay. There was another question about balsamic vinegar and wine vinegars. Are they okay? What can we use?
Usually balsamic vinegar contains more sugar than some of the wine vinegars. So I always use squeezed lemon or lime as salad dressing. But try it to see if you get cravings, or if you want more, or you start dreaming about balsamic vinegar at night, you should probably take it away.
And there was a question about squashes, butternut, acorn.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's okay if you're not too carb sensitive. Absolutely. And absolutely, no problem.
Cheese like cheddar cheese.
Cheddar cheese?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the same like with so many things, that many of us have to do the trial and see how we feel about it. If we start munching on it or dream about it or want it all the time, if we can have some cheddar cheese with a meal, I think that's pretty okay. That's not a problem.
Okay. And then your experience of post-bariatric tips, special tips.
For bariatric people?
Yes.
Well, one of the most important thing I think to work with them is to check for hydrochloric acid deficiency, because when you operate on your stomach, that's where you operate. So the one thing that I've seen with them is that they have very little hydrochloric acid, and they do really much better when they get some enzymes and hydrochloric acid as a supplement.
Okay. And are there any precautions for addicts who have a BMI of 34 on a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, who have large amounts of 80 ketones in their urine?
I would say that they would read up a lot on, and be checked by somebody when they start doing the low carb.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody would work with them. If they have any medical concern about these things, I would say work with somebody that knows what they're doing to help them to adjust, the meal plan and that.
And another question is about people who have dopamine problems with Parkinson's. Do you have suggestions for them?
Could you repeat the last question?
Dopamine problems with Parkinson's, and they do have nutritional problems and addicts.
Well, I would certainly put them on a low carb diet, no doubt about it, that I would take away all the processed foods and all that. I have not seen any studies done on Parkinson and sugar, but I used to work with a neurologist, and he said to me that it was very interesting that very few of the clients that he met that had Parkinson were actually alcoholics. They weren't too fond of alcohol. But he said that all the Parkinson clients that he met, they loved sugar. So of course, you should take away sugar, and I would do a fatty acid profile on them to see how that looks, because we can do that today as a very simple blood test, which I do a lot on my clients. So there are ways to restore sensitivity in the brain. but I'm not sure that could heal it, but it maybe could make some of the symptoms go away.
Thank you. One of the big problems for addiction is being ready to quit. Your clients go cold turkey. How do you recommend the rest of us get support to jump off that cliff?
Yeah, I know. That's a tough question. Well, I usually, when I meet somebody, tell them from day one, from minute one, that you need support. I mean, you need community, you need support, that's the way to do it. So right now we have one support group in English. We have pretty much just started that, which is a closed group on Facebook called Sugarbomb in Your Brain. And we are starting to get that one running. Join there. And we have one in Swedish too. And there's where I have people start. And then, of course, hook up with 12-step community. There are a lot of meetings online. There are a lot of telephone meetings, at least here in Sweden, we can get that. And have somebody that have, done the road, walked the road before you, help you doing that. And the best is, of course, too, if you have a possibility to work with a professional that can really guide you. That would be the ideal. I mean, I used to joke and say the ideal thing would be if we had a treatment facility where everyone could be for, 4, 5, 6 weeks to get started. But we don't have that. Well, I know we have Veras up in Canada, but Swedish people will not go there. I can tell you they can't afford that. But there are a few places you can go. But if you don't have the possibility to go into treatment, use support, work with a counselor online. Many of my counselors speak English and they can work online with you today.
And another question about detox period where the craving is high, how to support our clients during that stage of recovery?
Well, one of the things that I tell them, post closed group several times a day. Tell us what your red dog, the illness is trying to fool you to do. Tell us how you feel. Let us support you. Eat good food, eat regular, all these things. Use glutamine and coconut oil between meals, and do that regularly. A lot of people do that for one day and then the next day they feel a little bit better and then they quit. I usually recommend that you do that for 2 to 3 weeks in order to get over the worst part of detox, which is usually around 21 days. My experience is too that they might need hydrochloric acid or fat breaking down enzymes in order to be able to handle the switch from carb fuel to protein and fat fuel.
Okay, and you did mention that your email address is
Bitten.Jonsson, spells Swedish way, Jonsson, @bittensaddiction.com. It's on the screen here too, on the last one.
Wonderful. I want to thank you ever so much for taking this day, and we will definitely invite you to speak again.
Thank you very much.